What's up, fam? Smash the like button for the algorithm and let's get started with the story. On that day, dozens of students celebrated their graduation and walked around the schoolyard chatting with friends. It was a sunny day. Everyone was happy and already full of nostalgia. It was the day before the high school graduation ceremony, and the students would remember it for a long time. Nothing foreshadowed any trouble. It was supposed to be just a happy day for teenagers. While one of the graduates was walking calmly to school, he was almost hit by a boy who ran past him quickly, not looking back. For that boy, perhaps there was no point to the day. He didn't care. But when he started to hurry, he tripped over his own foot and fell. At that moment, it was as if his whole world turned upside down. Everything changed in just 1 second. Dessen didn't even realize what had happened. But he came to in the middle of hell. Everything was on fire, the sky was covered with strange lightning, and it was incredibly hot. Even the ground was dry. At first, the young man was very frightened when he had to see it all with his own eyes. He was so afraid that he did not get up from the dry ground for some time. Not only did he see a completely different world around him, but there was also a whole lot of hell going on next to him. He saw a creature that resembled a dragon, and this dragon was eating someone's flesh. But it was not over yet. Next to this creature, which had previously existed only in fantasy for him, stood another one with 4 eyes. The guy sat there silently, looking at it all, unable to believe that it was really happening. There was no explanation for why he was here. Dessen could not explain how he got here. Unfortunately, all of this did not turn out to be a realistic nightmare, and he was unable to return to the real world. It was the 10th day of his stay here, and he was very hungry. There was neither day nor night here. He did not even see the sunlight. The boy walked several meters, hiding from the monster, and finally found some meat. He didn't have any normal food here. All he could find was rotten meat that the monsters hadn't finished eating. Tasted just awful. It was disgusting to eat such things, but he ate it anyway because otherwise he would have starved to death. He had to force himself to put this disgusting piece of meat in his mouth to survive in hell. He had to adapt. Of course, it was not easy at all, and while the young man was eating this already tasteless food, he saw the same monster behind him. This mutant attacked him, and all this was accompanied by its loud and incredibly scary scream. Dessen ran as fast as he could. It was not the first time he had to run away from the inhabitants of this place, and the boy immediately picked up a large stone from the ground in order to escape and protect himself. He threw this stone at the monster, looking back only for a second. In order to survive, he had to always be attentive to the sounds around him. He had to always watch these creatures and get some food. He had to fight. When the monster retreated, the boy cried. He missed his mother, whom he had not seen for so long. Nothing changed in the coming days. Only the number of monsters increased slightly. On the 39th day, Dessen met the creature again and began to fight it. He beat it with all his might. Fortunately, the monster finally surrendered, and he managed to kill it. The guy was beating it with such anger, calling it all the curses he knew, but he was able to kill more than one of them. Dessen had a goal. He wanted to kill them all. Despite the fact that he was scared and his body was trembling with fear, he continued to fight for his life. He had to give up humanity, civilized behavior, and ordinary human life. The days were long. Everything was the same. He existed here in fear, and the 51st day came. He killed another mutant and ate its meat. It still tasted terrible, but he ate it to survive. Despite this, disgust turned into a kind of luxury because without that meat, he would have died. At least the young man tried to roast it well over the fire. Little by little, the guy got used to what was happening here, and now his level had risen to the 3rd. It seemed that he had finally gone mad and considered this world to be his normal place to live. But still, some hope flashed through his mind. He didn't know how, but he knew he would get out of here one day. When he read about the level upgrade, he clicked accept on the screen and sighed heavily. While the boy hoped to return home, this world did not let him go, and the next 7 years continued at the same pace for him. Now most worms died after just one bite, and he didn't have to spend a lot of time on them. A lot of time had passed, and it was already his 24th year here. Then Dessen decided that he would make a sword for himself out of the ore he had recently obtained from the Steel Knights. Then came the 51st year. He had already decapitated a miserable incarnation of monsters, had a hard day, and managed to work fruitfully. Now the days were flying by. 79 years and 365 days had passed, and the meeting he had been waiting for was finally going to take place. On this day, the long-awaited audience with the Demon King was to occur. This was the monster that had dragged Dessen into hell, so the desire to deal with him and destroy him was off the charts. Later on, the boy entered the courtyard of the king's castle and then continued to destroy one monster after another, reaching his goal. He was now able to do it very easily. He did not think about the movements that had already been perfected. Then Dessen was able to attack the Demon King's doorman, which made him very angry. How dare someone do that? He swore that he would cut off the person's limbs and throw them to the snakes. Afterwards, a difficult fight started, almost a final fight. It was really different from what the guy had faced before. Although he had to make more effort, the young man did not spend too much time on it. The doorman could have survived if he had simply opened the gate himself. Dessen continued to struggle, confident in his abilities, but the man simply threw him away. The young man managed to slow down in time and stopped without losing his temper, after which the doorman repeated his words of hatred for the boy. He started screaming very loudly, beginning to swing his sword again, but Dessen prepared to strike. After a few seconds, the prisoner of hell rushed into action to finish the last obstacle before the Demon King. He had trained for a long time, had a lot of experience, and now it came in handy because he managed to withstand the power of one of the strongest in the world. Despite the fact that it was really quite difficult, Dessen did well and continued to deliver blow after blow. This was a really strong and brutal opponent that would be better to destroy right away. The demon was still furious that some crook had dared to challenge him. That's why the doorman wanted to do away with this miserable man who was trying to pass himself off as a brave swordsman. But while he was talking, Dessen had already struck. He managed to hit the demon right in the chest, and only then did it stop talking. When this happened, the demon only began to growl louder, and the boy wondered how he could get the lost sword back if it was still able to fight. This doorman was too loud, he shouted so much, and it didn't even lead to anything because he talked too much instead of fighting. With his body pierced through, the demon continued to scream in despair. It was simply impossible that any human could overcome him. These were his last words, after which the horned creature fell with a noise onto the dry, hot ground. This small creature flying nearby asked what the young man planned to do next because the Demon King would definitely be angry about this. At first, Dessen needed to make sure that he really wanted to kill the king and become the absolute ruler of hell. But he said he was not interested in hearing that. Then the flying creature asked him why he was fighting against demons at all, and the young man began to find out what had happened. 80 years had already passed since he had been sent to hell. He fought many monsters to survive here, and those monsters were very serious. Everyone has different stories and reasons for going to hell. That's why he had questions. He wanted to know why he was in this hell and why the Demon King had brought him here. That's all Dessen wanted to ask the king about it. However, the creature thought he was a fool because he could just ask the demon politely and leave. His assistant advised him not to do so, but rather to kneel and ask the king for forgiveness. But Dessen only replied that the price had to be paid, the price for dragging him to hell and making him suffer for so many years, and he was not going to stop. So he moved forward. As soon as he started to move towards the king's castle, he fainted and woke up in a completely different place. The guy did not know what was happening. He did not know where he was now. When he looked around, he realized that he was in a hospital. There were drips all around and he was connected to one. He hadn't dreamed about Earth for a long time. It seemed like 30 years had passed since that moment. But the young man still did not understand why he was dreaming about a hospital, and he couldn't even move. It seemed like sleep paralysis where you could only watch what was happening. He was like a vegetable now. He was not capable of anything at all. Only a few seconds later, the silhouette of a woman appeared in the doorway, looking excitedly at Dessen. The guy silently turned his gaze to her, being just as shocked. She came even closer to the bed, glad that her boy was awake, and Khan was beginning to dislike this dream. She hugged him, and the young man thought it was too childish and that he'd better wake up right now. His mom started crying, and he realized that he was feeling everything too clearly, as if everything was happening in reality, not in a dream. Khan still didn't know how to react to this, and his mind was racing with many thoughts. He remembered what happened in hell when he killed the monster behind the engine. The young man really thought that he would die here and would definitely not be able to withstand such trials. But then he saw another strange picture in front of him with the burning bodies of other demons. The flying head with horns was speaking quite angrily about how he had managed to kill the Demon King. It seemed that the guy could no longer recognize what was really happening. Having lost control, he did not hear what the man was saying at all. The coward Demon King tried to deceive him by talking through his teeth, but it didn't work. The demon's dismembered body looked much better than it had before, and Khan left its lair victorious. Now that the king had been killed, Khan became the absolute ruler of hell and had to decide what to do next. But the young man was thinking about something else. He had an opportunity he had been waiting for 80 years. He could return to Earth. This little demon asked about the Earth. He had already guessed that it was the place where Khan had lived before he went to hell. Every day, he hoped that he would one day get out of this cursed place. There was no reason to worry. He had to spend so much time in this crazy place, and finally, it happened. He made his choice. In a few moments, everything changed for him. The guy was lying on a bed in a local hospital, with doctors and nurses walking around. It was hard to believe that this was really happening, but the doctor said that Khan had been in a vegetative state for a long time and that it would be difficult for him to move for the next few weeks. But if he continued rehabilitation, everything would get better. The girl thanked the doctor for his care. If not for him, there is no telling what would have happened. However, at the same moment, Dessen started screaming loudly. The doctor and others immediately tried to calm him down, but he continued to panic, not knowing when he had been transferred here or even when he received a notification from the system. The sons ran to their mother, asking if this uncle would also become a monster. The children were very scared. The doctor approached the young man again, but he just kept shouting at him to stay away. It seemed like magic or some kind of paralyzing poison, but this man definitely did something to his body. It had to be just a dream, just a nightmare that would end soon. That's all the guy could hope for. How did he live before? And if everything is as he imagines, then what is the point of this life? He went through 80 years of suffering, and these people really thought that after that, he would just give up and die here. Even when he was dying on the empty ground of hell, he still begged for life. He begged to be forced to return to his home. Then 2 nurses took him under their arms because Khan was surprisingly aggressive. He was screaming at them to let him go before he killed anyone here, but he woke up in such a terrible body. It was even more annoying. For a moment, the guy was silent, continuing to look around the ward. Then the young man looked out the window and saw something strange. Only then did he stop escaping from the hands of these guys and seemed to be frozen in place. It was a big hole in the sky where lightning came from. This caused chaos in the city. Khan could not imagine why this was also the case on Earth, but it confused him greatly. But then the guy started to break out again, saying that no one present would survive after what they did to him. They held him tightly, trying to immobilize him completely, and then injected him with a sedative into his neck. In the end, the young man repeated once again that he would get rid of everyone involved, but gradually the medication began to work, and he gradually fell asleep, his eyes closing on their own. The doctors' faces were already unclear, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to speak. That's when the breaking news came on. Today, at about 9 o'clock in the morning, something happened over Songpa in Seoul. The gate opened. Luckily, a group of hunters who were responsible for the neighborhood was immediately sent there. At that time, the boy was already lying quietly on the bed, and the gate was still open. At the same time, the team of hunters was asked to report on the current situation and whether anything had changed, but none of them answered yet. They were silent for a while longer. Only a few minutes later, the group got in touch and reported that the chapter was currently in the last stage of destruction. He asked how long it might take, and he replied that everything was going well. That's why it can all be over in 1 hour. Then the head ordered to inform them immediately when the space ran out, and he promised to take care of the rest. We have just received news that thanks to the prompt work of a team of hunters, the opening of the gate was eliminated, and then the gate itself was closed. There is a team of hunters in the molehill now. That was all Khan heard. Then a man came into the young man's room, holding a package in his hand and a smile on his face. Khan had no idea who was standing in front of him. He just looked at his face in silence. This man was really surprised that the young man did not know who he was. There was only one assumption. Perhaps it was Jong Ho, and it turned out to be true. It was indeed Jong Ho. He sat down next to him and asked him how he was feeling. Khan got up and said that everything was fine. The guy finally came to his senses. It had been 10 long years since he had fallen, only 10 years. There was still noise in Khan's head, and he couldn't believe what he was hearing. 10 years ago was the day he was supposed to graduate from high school. He was full of energy. Everything was fine. But for some reason, he just fell to the ground, and that was it. Since then, for the next 10 years, he could not regain consciousness and lay in a hospital bed. When Khan was in hell, he was sure that 80 years had passed. But in reality, only 10 had passed. But then the young man breathed a sigh of relief. Only now did he finally smile and behave calmly. Jong Ho sighed. He only added that during all these years, his mother worked very hard because of the expensive treatment. She had to take 2 jobs, but now the most important thing is that he gets back in shape as soon as possible, and he doesn't have to worry about his job either because Jong Ho has left 1 vacant position. He only briefly answered him and fell silent again. The same day, the mother visited him and went for a walk with her son. The weather was nice, and her mood immediately improved. In hell, he fought for a chance to return to his body and survive, and here he would have to take responsibility for his family and help them as much as he could. But at the moment, the guy could not even walk in peace, and that could bring a lot of trouble. Khan could become a ballast for his family. There is no less cruelty in reality than in hell. Then his mother stopped, and her face seemed to have gone pale again. Two men in suits stood in front of her and addressed her. Dessen turned his gaze to the two, already realizing what they were talking about. They couldn't get through to his mother, and she needed to pay back the money she had borrowed. The men came closer, and his mother tried to come up with some excuse. She apologized and said she would have the money ready by next month. But neither of them was happy with that answer. They had heard her say that so many times before, but the woman promised that this time she would definitely have the money ready. She just needed a little more time. But instead, he just hit her, taking her hand away. He did not like anyone touching him at all. He started shouting and said that when you borrow money, you should at least pay it back on time, and this time they weren't going to deal with it the nice way. They were both tired of it. My mother asked him not to do it in front of the child. She promised to return the money next month, but it was already the second year of such promises, and for some reason, she was not ashamed in front of her child. Maybe if he beats her, she will finally listen to him. This man started to hit her face. She fell down in front of Khan's wheelchair, who could not even help in this situation but was already on the verge. These men heard what the kid had just told them about the damn freaks, and they were even amused. But then he corrected himself and said that they were both cowardly insects incapable of doing anything. My mom immediately turned to him and asked him not to talk to them like that. But if he was so brave, the man told him to continue, taking him by the collar. There were tears in my mother's eyes, and she asked the young man to apologize before it was too late. He was just a patient. He had absolutely nothing to do with it. But the man knew everything perfectly well. He knew that all these large sums of money were spent on the treatment of this kid. However, Khan did not stop there and asked with a smile what they were going to do next. It was too brazen. He has a problem with his head if he dared to do that. I wonder who really looks like a pathetic insect now. The man smiled, squeezing Khan's collar tighter. Then he threw him to the ground, adding that Khan was helpless now. He couldn't even walk on his own, and a miserable insect like him should be crushed immediately. He began to kick him, continuing to laugh at the guy. If his body hadn't been in such a terrible condition, no one would have survived. My mom asked him to stop, at least not to be so cruel to him, but he didn't even listen to her. He just told the younger one to try calling him that at least once more. If only they were in hell now, Khan would have dealt with them long ago. But at that moment, a notification appeared about a divine quest and an offer to complete it. He did not know what kind of quest it was or simply did not remember anything about it, but when a window with a choice appeared, his doubts were short-lived. These windows were the only thing that helped them survive in hell for 80 years. But a few seconds later, something happened to him that he did not expect. Suddenly, everything changed. The world around him froze for a moment. It seemed that time had stopped and he was the only one outside of it. Maybe it's because I got the assignment. This is the only logical explanation. The task was in progress, the body had to be restored, and the difficulty was the lowest. He needed to get to his destination, and the reward was the restoration of an improved state, along with added percentages to health. But it was something else that comforted him the most. They talked about recovery, that is, his body would be returned to normal. So his task began, and Khan decided to complete it so that he could do what he wanted to do. Now he had to get to the designated point. It was very close. Perhaps if he got to this point, it would all start. Khan was ready to even crawl there if only he could get his normal body back. Although it looked simple, he found it difficult to do even that. He was ashamed of himself for barely managing such a small thing. At this speed, it would be difficult to get there in the allotted time. You can't get there by just wishing. However, the young man still tried to think rationally. The system cannot give a place that is impossible to pass, and so it is in this case. It may be difficult, but it is definitely possible. Then the guy realized something. He just needed to move around to get to his destination in any way possible. There was not a single word about getting there. Khan read what he had written once more. Though he could barely hold himself up, what a pity it was that he realized all this only now. It was indeed harder than he thought, but somehow the young man made it to the wheelchair. Khan tried his best to sit on it, but his arms almost did not want to obey. There was still time. He had the opportunity to get to the right place even though there were only 9 seconds left in the task. Khan began to spin the wheels with all his might as the seconds ticked away. He was already dripping with sweat, but he finally reached the finish line. Then, as a reward, Khan was given a medicine to restore his body. This medicine was to improve the current state of the perfected being. Dessen drank the potion immediately without even thinking about it. The pain disappeared and his strength began to return. Apparently, this was really the effect of the medicine. Only at that moment did time return to normal. All Sun noticed was that the little idiot had disappeared. Then the hospital staff approached and began to deal with the men. The mother excitedly approached her son, and then she fell silent. Tung was still surprised to see Dessen in the opposite direction. His colleague simply suggested that he leave before it was too late and then deal with his mother. The woman sat down next to her son, hugging him. Now the guy was very interested in the fact that the screen with this choice appeared there in front of him. Khan tried to summon it several times, but there were no results. So the young man decided to give up the window task. It all happened so fast and strange. He needed to restore his own body as soon as possible before those bastards came back. Khan decided to create a quest for himself. The Pantheon was now waiting for a visit from Perfection and Ideal, and the young man did not know what it had just been. At the same time, Dusan found himself in a place unknown to him. At first, the guy thought it was just a dream, not reality. That's when he read that improvement had arrived at the Pantheon. The enhancement diaries were still in the process of being recognized. Based on the information about these diaries, a virtual avatar was created there as well, and Han must complete his realization by completing tasks. In any case, it now seemed to him that this was definitely not a dream. Perhaps it's better to do as the system says. Now he finally decided that it was worth doing, so he wanted to get started. This task was on the medium difficulty level. He had to break the specified object, and the reward would be a memory card for improvement. The young man walked on when he saw a large head next to him. It was the same object. So the guy hit it right away. He managed to destroy it with the first blow. After completing the task, the young man ran forward. He needed to get there to finish, but it was not the end. He had to do 1,000 push-ups. He had 2 hours to complete this task. So far, it had been quite difficult for him, and the realization rate had reached 55%. At the moment, it was a kind of mockery. He had already done so much, and here he was only a little more than halfway done, and the reward was terrible. He liked doing the tasks but wanted them to be more interesting. At that moment, new inscriptions appeared on the screen again. The level was medium and the task was called training. As if in battle, Khan had the idea that this was the crying demon. At the same moment, a large accumulation of magic appeared in front of the boy. At the same time, he saw the very demon in question. Several times in hell, the young man almost died because of him, but now he was incredibly happy to see him. Now the fight should finally begin. Khan had prepared for this training. Now his body was in a normal state, and this allowed him to fight. At this rate, if he fought, he would simply be turned into powder, and that would be the end of it. Then the young man jumped up, pushing off the ground, and tried to attack the monster in the face. We can say that he succeeded. He really hit his body. But it seems that he had already gotten used to what was happening in hell itself. He hurt himself pretty well. Now there were drops of blood on his clothes, which they gave him at the hospital, and he fell to the ground. He felt a little ashamed that he was able to overcome such a demon. Now it looked like a humiliation, but his enemy was not going to stop and tried to attack him again and again. At the same time, the enemy came even closer to him, keeping an eye on him and trying to attack him. He was really quite strong, and it was not easy to deal with him, especially since he fought really well. Even now, Han was grabbed by the crying demon, and he almost fainted. Only at the last moment did he remember one thing. He remembered what had happened some time ago with the same demon in hell. The boy managed to defeat him. It was easy for him at the time because in hell he was really incredibly strong, and killing a demon was not a difficult task. Khan perfectly remembered the method he used to destroy the demon. Now all he had to do was repeat what he had done then. The demon was still holding him tightly with its paw, squeezing the boy's body harder and harder. But at that moment, the boy took out his sword and swung it sharply, cutting off the creature's arm. The demon screamed loudly, and the sound made his ears ring. How fortunate that the young man remembered that he could call the sword to him anywhere. With these abilities, the fight was quite easy, and the young man was able to easily send the demon back to hell where he lived. Since he was wounded, it was not difficult. In a few minutes, the mission was completed. For successful completion, he could receive a reward, and when the task was completed, the player could see his progress. The percentage of realization at the moment was still 55%. After the successful mission, the hospital patient returned to the same place. His sword disappeared, and the guy started to feel better. He went to the window, opening it to get some fresh air. This sound woke up his mother, who immediately asked who it was because she hadn't even seen the silhouette of the person in front of her yet. Khan smiled happily as he said the word, "Mom." He looked at her lovingly while she silently tried to comprehend what she was seeing. The hospital was full of people. It was morning, and there was a lot of noise in the corridors. At the time, Dessen was in the ward with a doctor to undergo final and complete rehabilitation. But when he checked his condition, the doctor was incredibly surprised. He didn't even know how this was possible because it was the first case in his career. At my last checkup, the doctor said that I would need more than 6 months for full rehabilitation. But then miraculously her son started moving as if nothing had happened, and only 15 days had passed. Now the doctor could not say anything. He didn't understand anything either because from a medical point of view, the patient's condition and its sudden changes were absolutely unexplainable. Anxiety still haunted his mother, and she didn't even want to say out loud what she was thinking. Even though she admitted that it was a possibility, the woman still hadn't said the words, but they both knew exactly what she was talking about. But then the doctor said that usually some peculiarities can appear. That's why you don't have to worry about it. At least these words of the doctor reassured the mother for a while. But all that was surprising was that her son became dramatically lighter. The other doctor was still trying to find something, but the guy was already tired of being touched everywhere. He could only say that he was just surprised that his condition had improved so dramatically. Mom could not get enough of what she was seeing before her eyes. She had been waiting for this miracle for so many years, and now it had happened. Khan was much calmer now. He had no problems moving his legs and arms, but he needed to regain full strength as soon as possible. He wanted to return to his previous state, so he decided to do it right away. Soon the young man came out of the ward, stretching his shoulders, and there he saw his mother talking to a nurse. She sincerely thanked her for her care and for the help she was giving her son. There was really no limit to this woman's generosity, even though the nurse herself said that what she had done could not be compared to what his mother had gone through over the years. She held on and believed in the best, even though the indicators were quite bad. But now a miracle really happened. Unable to hold back her tears, the woman burst into tears. It was hard for the guy to imagine. He really could not believe that he was already back here. It was even harder for him to realize how difficult it was for his mother to live all this time. She had protected him over the years and cared for him, earned money, worked 2 jobs, and now it was his turn to protect her. Khan went to the restroom and then called the Pantheon. He wanted to make his rehabilitation go even faster. He should not waste even a minute of time, and whatever it is, he needed to put an end to it. The first time, even now, the level of his task was not easy. The player immediately chose hell for himself, and now his test had begun. A large sphere appeared in front of him, and the world looked completely different. He had to wait only a few seconds, and his enemy came out of the sphere holding a weapon. The young man smiled. There was indeed a lot of noise, and a mountain of dust was raised. Only after a moment did the guy look at what appeared in front of him, and he also could not believe that it was true. The perfect being was Honda's Reed, a doppelganger. He had to win a fight with a certain object. Now the guy was standing in front of his enemy, but he was still silently looking at him, not attacking. On the other hand, this is not surprising. The only perfect being from hell is himself. So the young man drew his sword and prepared to attack. However, his enemy attacked first. His speed was incredible. Khan had already forgotten what he was like in hell. It would be really hard to fight against yourself, and a perfect one at that. Miraculously, the boy managed to repel the attack, but he did not hit his enemy and did not strike him. Khan was already getting annoyed. Even though he knew his strength level, he didn't think it would be so difficult. But this perfect creature was not going to stop at all and continued to attack his opponent again and again. All these attacks were exactly the same moves used by Des himself during his stay in hell, and they saved his life more than once. The guy was trying to at least somehow resist his enemy, which was really difficult for anyone else in his condition. He could not overcome him in strength or speed in his current state. The longer they fought, the more disadvantageous it would be for the young man himself. He was trying to retreat now to come up with a plan to deal with his enemy quickly, but this creature was not an easy one. While in hell, the guy also had magic which his opponent used now. It turns out that someone's copy is much better than the current one. You can't even be happy about it now. But the young man was sure that today he would definitely die by his hand. Now he could associate himself with a Dota 2 hero, a hero named Bloodseeker. This is the character who can catch up with wounded opponents, increasing the speed of the attack and so on. It seemed that now their powers could reach the same level, and the boy would be able to really defeat his double from hell. However, his copy started attacking first, and Khan barely managed to dodge his blow in time to avoid getting hit in the leg. But immediately afterward, its copy stopped without even moving. At this point, it was the perfect time to attack. The young man did just that, after which the double from hell immediately flew down and received a severe blow to the head. Khan took his sword and decided to finally finish off his enemy with the weapon in order to complete the task accurately and defeat him. But this one was too fast and was able to immediately move away from him, saving his life. Now the doppelganger was already behind the guy and prepared to strike again. This idiot was also able to use Bloodsucker's anger, which Khan did not expect from him, and this made his task much more difficult. He was getting really annoyed with what was happening. He was about to defeat him, but he would not give in. Perhaps because he let his guard down, the copy was easily able to attack him with its weapon in the back. He still had to fight, but early on he was incredibly strong. KH actually couldn't move his right hand where the sword hit. His body began to hurt even more, and the blood continued to pour out on the ground while his rival gloated. By now, the young man's body was so tired that he could not even stand upright. His limbs were trembling. At that moment, someone started knocking on the restroom. It was a cleaning lady. She was just about to enter, but the door was closed, so the woman started looking in her pockets for a key to open it because no one answered from inside. He thought it would be a waste of time to try to do something and defeat a copy in such a terrible condition. You just won't be able to win. But if he loses now, everything he has accumulated up to this point will turn to dust. Khan tried to think of something. He needed to think of a way to kill this gatekeeper, that is, him from hell. But no ideas came to mind, and his strength left his body. Only at that moment did the player remember that there was an inventory. Right now, it could save him. Luckily for him, someone distracted Aung Kim. They said someone was calling her on the 3rd floor, and she had completely forgotten about it. The woman decided to put the keys away and went to the 3rd floor where she was called. Meanwhile, Khan was trying to do everything he could to buy himself some time and pass the test. In just a few seconds, he had an inventory that could have saved his life. He would just have to wait a little bit, find what he needed, and then he would be able to pass this test. He had not yet completed the task and was not going to leave here as a loser. The young man took out a potion. This was the stuff he got for every task he completed. This bottle had been lying around in his inventory all along, but now it was exactly what he needed. This medicine would help increase his stamina by 20%. If so, after drinking 5 of these vials, he would be able to fight on par with his copy. Khan tried to do everything as quickly as possible, but his opponent was not far behind and continued to deliver blow after blow. The young man just kept dodging, and it took him a little while to drink the bottle. Immediately afterward, his strength really increased, as did his endurance. Right now, it helped him a lot, and he managed to reach the same level as his opponent. There was no point in wasting time now, so the young man was going to drink absolutely all the vials and increase his endurance to the maximum while his opponent was lying somewhere far away and regaining consciousness. The young man had just opened all the jars of potions. He had already managed to drink 2 whole bottles, and he could feel the effect right away. While Khan was drinking the 3rd vial, his copy began to attack again, but he managed to easily dodge and strike it again. Now this double did not seem so strong, at least in comparison. He didn't have that much of an advantage over the guy himself. He continued to attack with his sword to defend himself, but now a decent level of strength had reached the next stage. At least that's what the guy thought. He thought he could defeat his doppelganger very easily after all those vials. He seemed to have recovered, but it was just as difficult to fight. In a short moment, the double grabbed him by the neck and squeezed him with all his might. At this point, the young man lost the opportunity to fight back, and if he stood there for a few more seconds, he would not be able to. Literally, with his last strength, the guy shouted out the word inventory, after which the portal appeared in front of him again. He was about to take out the thing he wanted, but his opponent's sword got there first. However, the boy managed to do exactly what he wanted. In this way, the boy was able to protect himself because he moved this portal to the place where the opponent was going to attack. It's good that his power was still with him and hadn't disappeared. Finally, he managed to complete this terrible task. He had to spend so many nerves on all this, but he maximized his realization. Of course, getting his strength back is a good thing, but something was bothering him. Along with all his strength and power, the scars that reminded him of the hard times in hell returned. His entire body was scarred, but now he wanted to at least go back, so he told the system to bring him back outside. In addition, he had one unread message, and a sign was displayed with a suggestion to read it. Right now, the young man opened the message and read that someone needed his help. He might have agreed, but not in this case. Someone wanted him to help them after so many years of suffering in hell, spent alone with monsters. They wanted the young man to help them only because he was their sovereign. Of course, Khan was not going to accept their request. He was too angry with these pieces of garbage to help them with anything else. After that, the young man only repeated that the system should let him out of here at last. A short time later, the woman found herself in her ward, where she immediately began to train. His mother and the doctor who entered the room were truly shocked by what they now saw in front of them. Now it seems that her son is really awake. Even though the doctor had previously assured her that she should not worry about it, now there are no specific symptoms of awakening, so there is no need to really worry about it. But there is no other way to explain everything that is happening to him now. The woman only began to worry more about her son. She also had no other explanation for what had happened to her son. Then the doctor told them that this was all that they could do to help. The rest should be handled by the association, not the hospital. It's an awakening and an association. All this is like another world for him now. Although the young man tried to pretend not to notice anything and to be preoccupied with the task, there was something here too. Khan was sure that his mother was hiding something from him. He hadn't been on Earth for 10 years, as the doctor said. He was just lying on the bed. But it means to someone that something happened in this world. Finally, they arrived, and my mom told me to go inside and rest, and she would be right back. The guy entered the room and saw a girl doing something near the shelves. The young man stopped. He didn't even know who she was or what she was doing here. The girl also saw him and then stood up, looking directly into his eyes with the same surprised look. They stood there for a few more seconds, and then his mother came into the room and offered him something to eat in the kitchen. The woman then turned her attention to Jessa and asked in surprise where the girl had been all this time. She didn't even answer the phone, even though she knew she was worried. No one explained anything to the boy, but the name still spoke to him. The girl didn't answer either. She just held a few bills in her hands. My mother also fell silent for a moment and then seemed to understand everything herself without any explanation. The girl just frowned and hid the money in her jacket pocket, then turned away from them. The guy hadn't been here for 80 years, but nothing seemed to have changed since then. His sister remained as harmful as she had been as a child, but outwardly she was really unrecognizable. However, now the boy was even ashamed that he did not recognize his own sister. She only said briefly that her brother looked completely healthy and that every day here was like hell. Yezu then silently left the house without saying a word to any of them. Only at that moment, voices were heard from behind the gate, asking, or rather ordering, the door to be opened. They all looked toward the door, and my mother visibly began to worry. They were the same men who had harassed them in the hospital, and they said that if they didn't open the door, they would demolish it. My mom was really anxious. She went out into the yard not even knowing what to do since no one opened the door. One of the men started kicking it, but Yezu didn't even think about going back to her mom and brother. She was still standing calmly in front of the door, especially since they knew perfectly well that someone was inside. It's just that no one opened it to them. In fact, these men had already begun to doubt that it was the same house, but one of them offered to break down the door and go inside anyway. But they didn't have time to do anything. The door opened, and Yezu came out. She looked at them both silently at first and then rudely said that these men were making too much noise and called them rare creatures. After that, the girl just went about her business while the two men watched her in silence, not even knowing what to say. They did not know who she was, but they could have guessed that she was the woman's daughter. Since the door was left open, these men entered angrily, saying that they should have opened the door faster. My mom started apologizing. She told them that she couldn't call them because they had just been discharged from the hospital. Now she really had very little money in her wallet, but she was going to give away at least what she had. In just a moment, her purse and herself flew down, and the money scattered across the yard. How could she have ever thought that these two had come here with only such a small amount of money that no one needed at all? At one point, it seemed that she had lost consciousness. There was a wound on her face, and it became difficult to open her eyes. Seeing this, Khan could not stand it any longer and came out to them himself. He didn't say a word. He just hit one of the bastards hard in the face, and he fell to the ground with a noise. His face was also covered in blood. My colleague approached him, but the man was pointing in a frightened direction, looking at the guy. They themselves were surprised to see the young man looking so well, even though he had not even been able to move recently. Khan said that he himself wanted to meet them recently and that they came here on their own, and they didn't have to go anywhere. Yes, it was the same disabled man in a wheelchair. It turns out that there is some use for the money his mother begged them for, but the young man did not even listen to them and began to talk about his own. He asked if they knew how he had survived hell. Of course, it was all nonsense to them. They didn't even want to hear it. But Khan took hold of the face of the man standing next to him and clenched his jaw hard. After that, the guy said that he was boomeranging back to those he suffered from, but he did it 100 times worse than he had to go through. After that, Khan hit him hard in the face, but it didn't stop there. He just kept hitting him with all his might over and over again. Only after a while did the guy stop and throw him to the ground. However, he immediately ordered the man to get up because he had not yet paid him back in full. Togo's face was bleeding just like his colleagues. He could not say anything now. He was really in shock. How could someone who was in a wheelchair until recently be doing this to him? Deciding to take revenge, he picked up a nearby stool and was about to hit the boy with it. But he didn't succeed. Khan simply smashed it, thereby breaking his nose as well. It seemed to come that now everything is finally over. These two men even regretted climbing up here, but one of them had a knife with him, which he decided to use. The younger one wanted to take revenge for himself and his hung. He threatened him that he would wipe him clean and not leave him alive. He had called him to himself, but he did not even know how much he would regret it in a matter of seconds. Khan calmly walked up to him and grabbed the hand holding the knife by the wrist. At this point, the man started to panic and begged him to let go of his hand, which Khan only squeezed harder. He had hit his mother with it in revenge for everything. Khan abruptly twisted his arm in the other direction, and the man dropped the knife. He started screaming and jumping on the spot in pain, and the older man just sighed heavily, getting to his feet. He only promised that the guy would not be able to live in peace after all the things he had done to them. However, there was one way to deal with such cases. You could just kill someone so that there would be no consequences from those bastards who were making life difficult. But at that moment, the mother came to her senses and asked her son to stop. Despite everything they had already done, she said that this was not the way to do things and asked them to stop again. This moment was the chance for these two idiots. At that moment, they got up and were about to flee the scene. They did just that and succeeded. They ran away as quickly as possible to lick their wounds and return to the battlefield in good condition. They could not believe that it was the same bastard who was lying in the hospital. He had certainly grown in size, but it was definitely him. But a person who had been in a coma for a decade could not change that much. They just didn't know what to do. The chief ordered them to at least get a signature from her. But that's not what matters now. They needed to figure out how to pay this guy back for everything he did, and it seems that everything has already been thought of. Khan's sister was walking next to their car. She didn't pay attention to anything, but they stopped the car right in front of her. When her son fell unconscious, the mother went to countless hospitals without knowing what was wrong with him. Then she sold the house and kept only their shop. She thought her son would come around quickly, but in the end, all the money they had went to waste. It was only on the recommendation of a friend that she was able to take out a loan from the financial sector, but it was not easy to pay back the loan. Not only did the loan amount grow, but so did the interest on it. Then he asked about his sister. She was still supposed to go to school, but he was surprised that she looked like this now. Then my mom told someone that the year before, Jessa had dropped out of school, and last year my mom got hurt while working at a diner. Then the girl said she would help. My sister also suffered a lot during the day. She worked at a gas station, and at night she went to work in a store. Khan said he had to stop her. After all, she was still a schoolgirl and needed to finish school. But her mother simply did not have time because she also had to look after her sick son. He didn't even have any family. Only she and her daughter, who was not even an adult yet, had to do everything. The guy was only thinking that he should have been left alone. He blamed himself for all the things that happened to people because of him, but she could not do that. They are a family. A mother could not just abandon her child. At the same moment, the phone lying on the ground rang. The woman stood up and picked it up off the ground, looking at the screen. She sighed rather heavily and looked at Khan. The mother told someone that they were the same people, and then the young man asked to use the phone. He immediately asked what they wanted and why they were calling. She didn't hear any conversation, but she heard that Khan was very angry, and then it became clear that the situation was not good. They held his sister captive and ordered him to come here immediately with all the money if he wanted her to at least stay alive.